After breaking up with my first girlfriend when I was 21, had been single for about a year. It was the first time I had been single in years, so it took some getting used to. Again, eventually I decided it was time to get back into the dating scene, so I started downloading a bunch of dating apps. One of the apps I downloaded was OkCupid, which was the one I used the most. I vibed the most with one girl I matched with named Brenna. Based on her interests and biography, she was into A. After breaking up with my first girlfriend when I was 21, had been single for about a year. It was the first time I had been single in years, so it took some getting used to. Again, eventually I decided it was time to get back into the dating scene, so I started downloading a bunch of dating apps. One of the apps I downloaded was OkCupid, which was the one I used the most. I vibed the most with one girl I matched with named Brenna. Based on her interests and biography, she was into a lot of things I was into. She was a very pretty light-skinned black girl. We had talked for a while and agreed that I would pick her up at her place to go out and get food. I pulled up to her house on the west side of town at 6:30. It was about 10 minutes after sunset, so it was really getting dark. I texted Brenna and she took a while to answer. I said my car, actually staring at the conversation for a while, waiting for the texting bubble to come up. When it finally did, she responded saying, "Hey, sorry about that, my brother's gonna meet you outside. He's being really annoying and protective." I showed her how upset I was and how much I didn't want to have to meet her brother, but she just kept saying sorry. He's forcing me. I saw the front door of the house I was parked in front of open, and a guy came out walking over to the driveway while looking at my car. I got out to go over and meet him, realizing he towered over me. Another thing I quickly noted was the skin was significantly more dark than Brenna's, to the point that they wouldn't even seem related at all. He shook my hand and introduced himself as well. There didn't seem to be anything off-putting about him at first glance, and he seemed friendly enough. He started going on about how he just wanted to make sure I trust where the stand-up guy was about to take out his sister. We talked for a little and he seemed normal enough. I guess he finally asked me to come inside to meet Brenna. He led me into the house and shut the door behind me. He told me to wait right there in the living room while he went upstairs to get Brenna. As he went upstairs, I looked into the living room to realize there were two men sitting on the couch, both giving me a certain kind of look I just didn't like. I said, "What's up to them?" One of them just slightly nodded his head, but just barely. Will from upstairs called down that he's trying to find Brenna, which was odd. I turned to look at the room adjacent to the living windows, trying to break them. I was able to drive away down the block, but keep in mind this was on a public residential road. I have no idea how it didn't cause more of a scene out on the street. I made it home to tell my mom and dad what happened, still out of breath. They weren't shocked and almost didn't believe it, and they recommended I call the police. I did. I reported the house and the incident to the police. One of the neighbors vouched for my story anonymously because they saw the At the time of this story, I had already met a total of 3 people on Match.com. It didn't really work out with 2 of them, and the third one I dated for 4 months. After my breakup, I wanted to take a break from commitment and just find something more casual, and so I matched with a girl named Kylie who I got along with decently well on the app. She seemed down to just come over to my apartment and hang out for the night. She showed up about half an hour later and seemed really quiet. In person, we hung out in my room in the upstairs of my apartment for most of the night. We just talked for a while watching TV. In the background there were a bunch of awkward silences, but I did my best to fill them with new conversations. In the back of my mind the whole time I was thinking, are we gonna kiss? Does she expect me to move in for the kiss. How do I go about it? But hours of talking later, I started to realize there was something wrong with this girl. She became increasingly me and then laid down on her side facing away from me. I guessed she was ready to go to sleep. I turned off the TV and closed my eyes. We didn't say a single word to each other, and I have to admit it was very awkward. I fell asleep probably half an hour after shutting the TV. When I woke randomly in the middle of the night, I sat up and looked down at the floor and was able to see that Kylie didn't appear to be laying on the floor anymore. I flipped on the lamp and looked around the room. She wasn't anywhere actually, but just then I heard a waist downstairs. It sounded like it could be Kylie. All the walls in my apartment are paper thin, so noise travels quite easily throughout it, and quietly left my room and stood at the foot of the top of the stairs listening for what Kylie could be saying. All the lights upstairs were off, but she was talking in a low voice. I just couldn't tell for sure what exactly she was saying. I figured she was on the phone with someone, but still. I went downstairs to check. I stepped into the dark kitchen and there she was, but she wasn't on the phone. She was just creepy, sitting in one of the chairs facing the wall. She seemed to still be muttering to herself. I was frozen. All I could say was, "Kylie." She turned her head to me slowly, looked at me for a few seconds, then turned back to face the wall. I went upstairs quickly to my room and crawled into my bed to call my dad. I had to call at least 3 times before he finally picked up. Maybe 10 seconds. All I heard was my dad on the other end of the phone saying hello over and over. The next thing I saw was the silhouette of Kylie at my door, suddenly charged at me in my bed. As she began to scream, she lunged at me and put her hands around my throat, trying to choke me. However, I was able to quickly overpower her and hold her down against the bed. I screamed at my dad to call the cops. I was able to drag the insane girl downstairs. By the time the cops came, the cops took her away to fill out a few documents. I think it's safe to say that you should always meet people from websites and apps in a safe public place first.